I stood in the kitchen doorway, water dripping from my face, my hair plastered to my forehead, my cream blouse soaked through. My son, the boy I'd raised alone after his father died, the child I'd sacrificed everything for, stood there holding an empty glass, smirking. All I had asked for was a piece of bread. I was hungry. I hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. But asking was apparently too much. "Maybe that'll teach you to stop bothering me when I'm working," he said, turning back to his laptop as if I were nothing. As if I hadn't spent 40 years teaching other people's children so he could have everything he wanted. As if I hadn't sold my home to pay for his college. As if I weren't his mother. How did I get here? How did the woman who once commanded a classroom full of children, who raised a son alone, who survived grief and kept going, how did I end up begging for scraps in my own son's house? And what did I finally do when I discovered just how far his cruelty went? If this story touches your heart, please subscribe and stay with me to hear how this ends. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. You might see your own family in this story. My name is Margaret Chen, but everyone has always called me Maggie. I'm 72 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that if you loved your children selflessly, if you sacrificed everything for them, they would grow up to be good people. I believed that family meant something, that blood bonds couldn't be broken. I was wrong. Let me take you back to the beginning before everything fell apart. Before I learned that sometimes the people you love most can become strangers wearing familiar faces. I was born in 1953 in a small town in Northern California, the daughter of Chinese immigrants who ran a corner grocery store. My parents worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week, so my siblings and I could have opportunities they never had. I watched my mother's hands grow rough from sorting produce, saw my father's back bend from carrying boxes. They taught me that family sacrifice was noble, that putting others first was the highest calling. I became a teacher because I loved children, loved watching their eyes light up when they finally understood something that had seemed impossible. For 40 years, I taught second grade at Lincoln Elementary. I wasn't wealthy, teachers never are, but I was happy. I married Robert Chen when I was 26. He was a good man, gentle and funny, who ran a small accounting firm. We were comfortable, not rich, but comfortable enough. When Daniel was born, I thought my life was complete. I remember holding him for the first time, this tiny, perfect person, and promising him silently that I would give him everything, protect him from everything, love him more than life itself. I kept that promise. Maybe I kept it too well. Robert died suddenly when Daniel was 15. A heart attack at his desk, gone before the ambulance arrived. The grief nearly broke me. There were mornings I couldn't get out of bed, nights I cried until I had nothing left. But I had Daniel. I had to keep going for Daniel. He was a sophomore in high school, just beginning to think about college, and I couldn't let my sorrow steal his future. Robert's small accounting firm, I sold it to pay off debts and put money away for Daniel's education. The house we'd bought together, I took a second mortgage to make sure Daniel could go to a good university without student loans. My own retirement savings, I dipped into them again and again. New laptop for college, of course. Study abroad semester in Spain? How could I say no? Expensive business school for his MBA? I made it happen. I remember the day he got accepted to Stanford Business School. I was so proud I cried. "Mom, this is going to change everything," he told me, hugging me tight. "When I graduate and get a good job, I'm going to take care of you. You'll never have to worry about anything again." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my son. After he graduated, he got a job at a tech startup in San Jose. Good salary, stock options, the works. He met Jessica, married her within a year. I liked her at first, though she was a bit cold. But Daniel seemed happy, and that was all that mattered to me. They bought a beautiful house in an upscale neighborhood, 4 bedrooms, modern kitchen, backyard with a pool. I was still in my small 2-bedroom house in the older part of town, the house where Daniel grew up, but I didn't mind. I had enough. For the first few years, things were good. Daniel and Jessica would visit for holidays. We'd have dinner once a month. He'd call to check on me. "How are you doing, Mom? Do you need anything?" I always said I was fine. I didn't want to be a burden. Then, about 3 years ago, things started to change. The visits became less frequent. The phone calls grew shorter. When I'd call him, he'd sound distracted, impatient. "Mom, I'm in a meeting. Can I call you back?" He never did. I told myself he was busy. He had a demanding job, a wife, responsibilities. I understood. I didn't want to be that mother, the clingy one who couldn't let her child live his own life. So I waited. I waited for him to have time for me. 2 years ago, I had a health scare. I collapsed in the grocery store. Low blood sugar, the doctor said, combined with high blood pressure I hadn't known I had. They kept me in the hospital for 3 days. I called Daniel from my hospital bed. Jessica answered his phone. "He's in a meeting," she said flatly. "I'll let him know." He didn't come to the hospital. He didn't call. When I finally got home, there was a text message. "Heard you were sick. Glad you're okay. Things are crazy at work right now." I tried not to feel hurt. I tried to understand. But something inside me started to crack. Last year, everything changed. The medical bills from my hospital stay, combined with some unexpected home repairs, drained what little savings I had left. My pension was small, barely enough to cover utilities and food after my mortgage payment. I started skipping meals. Not every day, but some days. I told myself it was fine, that I was being careful with money, that teachers had lived through worse. One evening, I couldn't start my car. The battery was dead, and I didn't have money for a new one. I called Daniel. "Honey, I hate to ask, but could you help me with my car battery? It died, and I can't afford to replace it right now." There was a long silence. Then he said, "Mom, you really need to learn to manage your money better. I can't keep bailing you out." Keep bailing me out? I had asked him for help exactly once in his entire adult life. Once. But I didn't argue. I said, "Okay, sweetheart, I understand. I'll figure it out." A neighbor eventually helped me, and I paid him back with homemade meals for a month. The mortgage became impossible. I was 3 months behind. The bank sent foreclosure notices. I didn't want to lose the house where Daniel had grown up, where Robert and I had built our life, but I didn't have a choice. I called Daniel again. This time I was crying. "Daniel, I'm going to lose the house. I don't know what to do. I've tried everything. Is there any way you could help me, just until I can—" He cut me off. "Actually, Mom, Jessica and I have been talking. You shouldn't be living alone at your age anyway. Why don't you move in with us? We have plenty of room, and it makes sense financially." I was so relieved I started crying harder. My son wanted me. He was going to help me. "Oh, Daniel, are you sure? I don't want to impose." "It's fine, Mom. It's what Dad would have wanted. Family takes care of family, right?" That's when everything changed for me. That's when I learned that the words "family takes care of family" can mean very different things to different people. The house I'd lived in for 35 years was sold at a short sale. Most of my furniture went to a charity thrift shop. Daniel said they didn't have room for my old stuff in their modern house. I packed my life into 6 boxes and 3 suitcases. Photos, books, my teaching awards, my wedding dress, the quilt my mother made. Small treasures that meant everything to me. When Daniel picked me up on moving day, he barely spoke. He didn't help me carry boxes. He sat in his BMW, scrolling through his phone while I struggled to lift things into his trunk. "Hurry up, Mom. I have a conference call in an hour." The room they gave me was small, barely bigger than a closet. It had been their storage room. There were still boxes stacked in the corner, Christmas decorations, old electronics, things they didn't want but couldn't be bothered to throw away. "We cleared out most of it," Jessica said, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. "You can move those boxes to the garage when you get a chance. We'll get you a bed this weekend." That weekend came and went. No bed. I slept on an air mattress Daniel finally brought home 2 weeks later. This was expensive, by the way, he said, dropping it on the floor. Try to take care of it. At first I tried to be helpful. I'd cook dinner, clean the kitchen, do laundry. Maybe if I made myself useful, I thought, they'd see I wasn't a burden. But Jessica would criticize everything. Maggie, that's not how we cook chicken. Too much oil. Too much salt. We eat clean. Maggie, don't use that dish soap. It's not the organic kind we like. Maggie, could you not run the washing machine during the day? It's too loud when I'm working from home. I started to feel like a servant in their house. No, worse than a servant. A servant gets paid and treated with basic respect. Daniel changed too, or maybe he'd always been this way, and I'd never seen it. He'd walk past me without saying good morning. If I tried to hug him, he'd stiffen and pull away. Mom, I'm not a kid anymore. When I'd ask about his day, he'd sigh like I was exhausting him. It was fine, Mom. Same as every day. Meals were the worst. At first, I'd eat dinner with them, trying to make conversation, trying to connect. But Daniel would be on his phone the entire time, and Jessica would talk about people I didn't know, places I'd never been, things I couldn't afford. After a few weeks, Jessica said, Maggie, maybe it's better if you eat earlier. Daniel and I like to have dinner alone, couple time, you know. So I started eating alone in my tiny room, sitting on the air mattress with a plate in my lap, listening to them laugh together in the dining room I wasn't welcome in. The rules kept multiplying. Don't use the living room TV during the day. Don't leave dishes in the sink, even for 5 minutes. Don't shower after 9 p.m. because the water heater was loud. Don't open the windows in my room because it messed with the central air conditioning. Don't. I felt myself shrinking. I started walking quietly through the house, trying not to take up space, trying not to be noticed. I'd apologize constantly. Sorry, I didn't know you were using the kitchen. Sorry, I didn't realize that was your towel. Sorry. 3 months after I moved in, I noticed something strange. My mail wasn't coming. I'd been expecting a check from my pension, some letters from former teaching colleagues, a birthday card from my sister in Portland. Nothing arrived. When I asked Daniel about it, he said, "Oh, I had your mail forwarded here and set up online delivery. It's easier. I'll print anything important." But he never did. When I asked to see my mail, he'd say he forgot, or couldn't find it, or that nothing important came. I started to feel cut off from the outside world. One day, I ran into my old neighbor, Rosa Martinez, at the grocery store. I was so happy to see a familiar face I nearly cried. We talked for 20 minutes, and when I mentioned I hadn't received her Christmas card, she looked confused. "Maggie, I sent it to Daniel's address like you told me to in your note." "What note?" "The one you sent everyone, about how you were moving and to send all mail to Daniel's house and how excited you were to live with him." I never sent that note. Daniel had. He'd contacted my friends, my former colleagues, everyone in my address book, and told them I was thrilled to be living with him, that I wanted all correspondence to go through his house. He'd isolated me deliberately. That night, I tried to talk to him about it. "Daniel, why did you tell people I didn't want direct contact?" I never said that. He didn't even look up from his laptop. "Mom, you're being paranoid. I was just trying to help organize things. You should be grateful instead of complaining all the time." Complaining all the time? I barely spoke. I spent most of my days in my tiny room, reading library books, trying to stay out of their way. The food situation got worse. Jessica did the grocery shopping, and she bought specific things for specific meals. Everything was labeled in the refrigerator. Daniel's lunch, meal prep, do not touch, Jessica's yogurt. There was nothing labeled for me. When I asked what I could eat, Jessica said, "Oh, just whatever's not labeled." Common sense, Maggie, but almost everything was labeled. I'd find crackers in the pantry, peanut butter, some apples. I lived on that for weeks. I lost weight. My clothes started to hang on me. I felt weak all the time. One morning I woke up so dizzy I could barely stand. I hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days. I made my way to the kitchen. It was 6 a.m., and they were still asleep. I opened the bread box. There was fresh sourdough bread, the expensive kind from the artisan bakery Jessica loved. I took 2 slices and made toast with a little butter. I ate it standing at the counter, trying not to cry at how good food tasted when you were truly hungry. When Jessica came down an hour later, she saw the bread was open. "Did you eat our bread?" I nodded. "I'm sorry, I was so hungry and Maggie, that bread costs $8 a loaf." $8. If you want bread, tell me and I'll get you the cheap stuff from the regular grocery store. Don't eat our food, our food. I lived there, but it wasn't my home. It wasn't my food. It wasn't my house. I was a stranger, unwelcome and unwanted. If this story breaks your heart like it does mine, please hit that like button and tell me in the comments if you've ever felt betrayed by family. That's when the real cruelty began. The incident that changed everything happened on a Tuesday morning in March. I'll never forget it. I woke up at 5 a.m. with my stomach cramping from hunger. I'd eaten only an apple and some crackers the day before. I waited in my room until 7 a.m. when I heard Daniel moving around. Surely, I thought, surely my own son would let me have some food. I had to ask. I couldn't go another day like this. I found him in the kitchen, working on his laptop at the counter, a plate of scrambled eggs and bacon in front of him. The smell made my stomach growl so loudly I was embarrassed. "Good morning, Daniel," I said softly. He didn't respond. "Daniel, honey, I'm not feeling well. I haven't eaten much lately and I'm very hungry. Could I please have some bread? Just a slice or 2? He looked up at me with an expression I'll never forget. Not anger that I could have understood. It was disgust, like I was something dirty he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. "Are you serious right now?" he said. "Mom, it's 7 in the morning. I'm trying to work. Can't you figure out your own breakfast without bothering me?" "I would," I said, my voice shaking. "But Jessica asked me not to eat the labeled food, and everything seems to be labeled. I just need a little bread. I'm so hungry I feel sick." He stood up, walked to the bread box, pulled out the sourdough loaf. For a moment, I thought he was going to make me toast. Instead, he held the bread just out of my reach. "This bread?" he asked. I nodded. "You want this $8 loaf of bread that Jessica specifically bought for our lunches this week?" "I didn't know it was for specific lunches," I said. "I'm sorry. I just need something to eat." He pulled back the bread and set it on the counter behind him. Then he turned to the refrigerator, took out a pitcher of cold water, poured a full glass, and before I understood what was happening, threw it directly in my face. The shock of the cold water, the cruelty of the act, the way he did it so casually. I gasped and stumbled backward. Water ran down my face, soaked my hair, drenched my nightgown and robe. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My son had just thrown water on me like I was an animal misbehaving. "Maybe that'll teach you to stop bothering me when I'm working," he said, and I swear to God he was smiling. "Figure out your own food situation. You're not a child. I'm not going to hold your hand through basic life tasks." I stood there, dripping, shaking. Jessica came down the stairs, saw me soaked in the kitchen, looked at Daniel, and said nothing. She said nothing. She walked past me, poured herself coffee, and left the room. I wasn't even worth acknowledgement. I went back to my room, peeled off my wet clothes, dried myself with the one thin towel I'd been given. I sat on that air mattress and felt something inside me break. Not my heart, that had been breaking for months. Something deeper, my sense of self, my dignity, the part of me that believed I deserved to be treated like a human being. But here's what Daniel didn't know. Here's what he never thought to ask. When I sold my house, there was insurance money from Robert's death that I'd kept in a separate account, untouched for 20 years. Not a fortune, but significant. About $180,000. I'd been saving it for true emergencies, or perhaps to help Daniel with a down payment on a house someday. I'd never told him about it, because I wanted him to learn to stand on his own. Also, I still had access to my bank accounts, my pension, my credit cards. Daniel had offered to help me manage my money when I moved in, but some instinct made me refuse. I handled my own bills online, kept my financial information private. He assumed I was destitute, helpless. He never asked. He never checked. And there was something else he didn't know. I might have been a small-town teacher, but I wasn't stupid. I had noticed things. Strange things about Daniel's finances. 3 weeks before the water incident, I'd been using Daniel's printer because mine had broken. A document came through that he'd forgotten to retrieve, a credit card statement. Out of concern, not nosiness, I glanced at it. My son, who supposedly had a great job at a tech startup, had maxed out 3 credit cards, $47,000 in credit card debt. The charges were shocking. Expensive restaurants, luxury goods, a weekend in Vegas that cost $8,000, sports betting apps. I also found, tucked in a drawer when I was looking for stamps he'd offered to give me, letters from the IRS. Daniel owed back taxes. A lot of back taxes, over $60,000, with penalties mounting. The beautiful house? I overheard him on the phone one night, arguing with someone about being 3 months behind on the mortgage. "I'm good for it," he was saying. "I just need another month." My son was drowning in debt, living a lifestyle he couldn't afford, keeping up appearances while everything crumbled underneath. And he was taking his stress out on me. He resented me not just because I was there, but because I represented what he'd spent, the money I'd given him for school. Money he now saw as rightfully his that had been wasted on education when he could have invested it in crypto or stocks. I heard him say it to Jessica one night. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but my room shared a wall with their bedroom. "I can't believe my mom guilt-tripped me into taking her in," he said. "Do you know how much she's costing us? Food, utilities, her presence depressing property values when we try to sell eventually. She gave me money for college, sure, but that was her job as a parent. I don't owe her anything for doing the bare minimum, 40 years of teaching to provide for him, selling my husband's business, taking on debt, sacrificing my retirement, all of it, the bare minimum. That was the night I decided. I would not stay in this house. I would not let my son treat me this way for one more day. But I would not leave quietly. I would not let him think this was acceptable. I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening, and I needed to make sure he faced consequences. The day after the water incident, I waited until they both left for work. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I searched their house, not to steal, not to snoop for entertainment, but to find proof of what my instincts were telling me. In Daniel's office, in a locked drawer I opened with a hairpin my mother had taught me to use as a girl, I found everything. Credit card statements showing he was paying only minimum payments while continuing to max them out. Bank statements showing overdrafts covered by emergency transfers. Legal documents about the IRS debt, including a notice of tax lien filed against the property. And most damning, I found my mail. Months of my mail. Letters from my sister. Birthday cards from former students. Invitations to a former colleague's retirement party. He'd hidden it all in a box under his desk. But there was something else. Something that made my blood run cold. There was a document titled Durable Power of Attorney for Healthcare and Finance, Margaret Chen. It had my forged signature on it. He had been planning to take legal control of my life, my money, my medical decisions. There was a sticky note attached in Jessica's handwriting. File this with her bank. She won't notice. Once it's filed, you can access the insurance account she mentioned years ago. So they knew. They knew about the money Robert left. They'd been planning this. I took photos of everything with the cell phone Rosa had convinced me to get. Every document, every bank statement, every piece of mail he'd stolen. Then I called someone I never thought I'd need, an elder law attorney named Linda Pack that I'd seen advertised in the local senior center newsletter. I made an appointment for the next day. Linda Pack listened to my story in her office with an expression that shifted from sympathy to fury. "Mrs. Chen, What you're describing is elder financial abuse, emotional abuse, and possible fraud with that forged power of attorney. Your son could face criminal charges. My son, the boy I'd held as a baby. But he wasn't that boy anymore, was he? He was a man who threw water in his mother's face for asking for bread. What can I do? I asked. Linda outlined a plan. First, we'd secure my financial accounts with password changes and fraud alerts. Second, we'd file a police report about the forged power of attorney. Third, we'd send a formal cease and desist letter regarding the withheld mail and financial abuse. And fourth, this was the hardest part, I needed to leave that house immediately. I don't have anywhere to go, I said. The only other family I have is my sister in Portland, and I don't want to burden her. Linda leaned forward. Mrs. Chen, with the money you have from your late husband's insurance, you can afford a nice apartment. You can afford to live independently with dignity. You don't need your son. He needs to believe you need him, but you don't. That afternoon, I opened a new bank account at a different bank. I transferred every penny of my insurance money, my pension deposits, everything. I changed all my passwords. I set up fraud alerts. Then I went apartment hunting with Rosa, who'd insisted on helping when I finally broke down and told her everything. We found a beautiful one-bedroom apartment in a senior community just 4 miles from my old neighborhood. It had a small kitchen, a sunny living room, and a balcony with a view of a garden. The rent was affordable. They had activities, a community center, even a book club. This is perfect, I told Rosa, tears streaming down my face. This is home. I signed the lease that day. Move-in was possible in 1 week, but before I left Daniel's house, I had one more thing to do. Something I wasn't proud of, but something that needed to happen. Daniel had a credit card that he'd once given me for emergencies, a supplementary card on his account. I'd never used it. It sat in my wallet forgotten. Until now, Linda had explained that because it was a supplementary card in my name, I had legal authority to use it. And because Daniel owed me, morally if not legally, for the money I'd given him over the years, for the treatment I'd endured, I decided to use it. Not frivolously, but strategically. I went to a home goods store and bought everything I needed for my new apartment. A bed, a small couch, a kitchen table, dishes, towels, a TV, lamps, rugs. I bought a new laptop so I could email my friends and video chat with my sister. I bought groceries, real groceries, enough to fill a pantry and a refrigerator. The total came to $8,000. Then I did something else. I made a donation in Daniel's name to the Lincoln Elementary School, where I'd taught for 40 years. $5,000 for their library fund. They were thrilled and said they'd name a reading corner after our family. The Margaret and Daniel Chen Reading Corner. That brought me joy. Total charges, $13,000. Not even close to what I'd spent putting him through college and business school, but enough to make a point. The moving day came. I'd arranged for movers while Daniel and Jessica were at work. Rosa coordinated everything. By the time Daniel came home, my 6 boxes, 3 suitcases, and all my new furniture were in my new apartment. I was gone. The only thing I left behind was a letter on the air mattress in that tiny room. The letter said, "Daniel, I've moved out. You made it clear I wasn't welcome in your home, and you were right. It never felt like home to me either. I want you to know that I forgive you for the way you treated me, but I will not forget. I've taken legal action regarding the forged power of attorney and the stolen mail. I've filed reports with the appropriate authorities. You'll be hearing from my attorney and possibly the police. I've also used the credit card you gave me for emergencies. My homelessness and starvation in your house constituted an emergency. Consider it a small repayment for the $127,000 I spent putting you through school. I've also made a charitable donation in your name. You're welcome. I hope someday you'll understand that treating people cruelly, especially your own mother, has consequences. I don't hate you. I'm disappointed in who you've become. If you ever find your way back to being the kind person I raised, my door will be open. Until then, I need to live with dignity. Mom, I heard later from Rosa, who heard from a neighbor, that Daniel came home that evening, found the letter, and exploded. He called my old cell phone dozens of times. I'd changed my number. He showed up at Rosa's house demanding to know where I was. She told him she didn't know, and closed the door in his face. Then his credit card bill arrived. $13,000 in charges. He lost his mind. He tried to report the card as stolen, but the card company informed him that I was an authorized user and the charges were legitimate. He threatened to sue me. My attorney Linda sent him a letter detailing exactly how much money I'd spent on him over the years, with receipts and bank statements, and asked if he'd like to proceed with that lawsuit. He went quiet after that. But the real consequences came 2 weeks later. The police contacted him about the forged power of attorney. Apparently, forgery is a serious crime, especially when it involves attempting to gain financial control over an elderly person. Jessica admitted under questioning that she'd forged my signature using an old document as a template. She'd never thought they'd get caught. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Where in the world are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please subscribe for more stories of strength and redemption. Have you ever experienced family betrayal or seen an elder mistreated? Share your thoughts in the comments. The district attorney offered Jessica a deal, probation and restitution, in exchange for testimony about Daniel's involvement in elder abuse. She took it. My daughter-in-law, who'd watched me drip with water in her kitchen and said nothing, was now willing to testify against my son to save herself. Daniel's employer found out about the criminal investigation. Tech companies don't like employees under investigation for fraud and elder abuse. It reflects poorly on their culture. He was fired. Not laid off, fired. No severance, no stock options, nothing. The house of cards collapsed. Without income and with debt collectors circling, Daniel and Jessica couldn't make their mortgage payments. The bank foreclosed. They had to move into a small apartment, the kind they'd once looked down on. The BMW was repossessed. The designer clothes were sold online. Daniel tried to reach me through my attorney. He wanted to apologize, he said. He wanted to make things right. Linda asked if I wanted to meet with him. I thought about it for a long time. Could I forgive my son? Forgiveness, I realized, didn't mean allowing someone back into your life to hurt you again. It meant releasing the anger so it wouldn't poison you. I could forgive him and still protect myself. I agreed to meet him at a neutral location, Linda's office, with her present. Daniel looked terrible. He'd aged years and months. His hair was unkempt, his clothes rumpled. He was thin in a way that suggested stress, not health. When he saw me, his face crumpled. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. I was stressed about money and work, and I took it out on you. It's unforgivable, but I'm asking you to forgive me anyway." I looked at this man I'd raised, this stranger who'd thrown water in my face. "Daniel, I spent 40 years teaching children that actions have consequences. You're learning that lesson now. I do forgive you, because carrying hatred hurts me more than it hurts you. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. You abused me. You starved me. You humiliated me. You forged documents to steal from me. Those are facts. You'll face legal consequences, and you'll face personal ones. Jessica has already left you, I hear." He nodded miserably. She'd moved in with her parents the week after cutting her deal with the prosecutor. "I've lost everything," he said. "My job, my house, my wife, my reputation. And I deserve it. But Mom, please, I need you. I don't have anyone else." This was the moment I dreaded and prepared for. The moment my son needed me again, asked for my help again. The old Maggie, the one who'd sacrificed everything, would have opened her wallet and her heart. But I wasn't that woman anymore. "Daniel, I can't help you financially, and I won't let you back into my life right now. You need to figure this out yourself. You need to face what you've done. Make amends not just to me but to yourself. Rebuild your character before you rebuild anything else. If you truly change, if you truly become the man I believed you could be, Maybe years from now we can have a relationship, but it will never be what it was. You broke something that can't be fully repaired. I hope you find your way. I really do. But I'm not going to rescue you this time. I stood up and walked out. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Linda told me later that he sat there for 20 minutes after I left, just staring at the wall. In the end, Daniel pleaded guilty to charges related to the forged power of attorney and elder abuse. He got probation, community service, and was ordered to pay restitution to me. Not that he had any money to pay with. His credit was destroyed. He had to move back in with his own mother-in-law, Jessica's mother, who I heard treated him with about as much warmth as he treated me. Karma, it seemed, had a sense of irony. As for me, I moved into my apartment and slowly built a new life. Rosa became my closest friend. I joined the book club, started volunteering at the local elementary school library. The kids loved having a real former teacher help them choose books. I reconnected with old colleagues and friends. I video called my sister every Sunday. I even went on a few dates with a nice widower named Frank from the senior center. Nothing serious, but it was nice to be treated kindly, to be valued. The reading corner at Lincoln Elementary was dedicated in a small ceremony. Former students, now adults, came to honor me. One of them, now a teacher herself, said, "Mrs. Chen, you taught us that kindness matters, that education matters, that we all deserve respect. You changed my life." I cried happy tears that day. I learned something important in those dark months in Daniel's house and in the bright months that followed. I learned that love isn't sacrifice without boundaries, that giving everything doesn't guarantee anything, that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their choices. I'd enabled Daniel my whole life, giving him everything, protecting him from struggle. I'd meant well, but I'd raised someone who believed he was entitled to everything and responsible for nothing. Looking back now, I understand I should have let him struggle more, should have taught him that respect and gratitude aren't optional. Maybe if I had, he would have become a better man. Or maybe he simply was who he was, and nothing I did or didn't do would have changed that. Either way, the boy I'd raised was gone, if he'd ever existed outside my hopeful imagination. In his place was a man who had to find his own way. My story isn't one of complete redemption. Daniel didn't transform into a grateful son. We don't have warm Sunday dinners together. I still feel the ache of that loss, but I have my dignity. I have my freedom. I have friends who love me, a community that values me, and the knowledge that I stood up for myself when it mattered most. I stopped allowing someone to treat me as less than human, even if that someone was my own child. Today, as I sit on my sunny balcony with a cup of tea and a good book, as I watch birds in the garden below and plan lunch with Rosa, I am at peace. Not because everything turned out perfectly, but because I chose myself. I chose dignity over false family harmony. I chose freedom over obligation to someone who'd shown me he didn't deserve my sacrifice. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this: you teach people how to treat you. When you accept abuse, when you make excuses for cruelty, when you keep giving to people who only take, you teach them that your mistreatment is acceptable. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. Sometimes the most loving thing is to say, "No more." I don't know what Daniel is doing now. I don't ask. Linda says his probation is going well, that he's working some entry-level job, trying to rebuild. Maybe he'll find his way to being a decent person. Maybe he won't. Either way, it's not my responsibility anymore. I raised him. I loved him. I gave him everything I could. What he does with his life now is his choice. As for me, I'm finally living for myself. I'm taking painting classes at the senior center. Turns out I'm not bad at watercolors. I'm planning a trip to visit my sister in Portland next month. I'm reading all the books I never had time for when I was teaching and raising a child and surviving. I'm laughing again. I'm eating good food whenever I want, whatever I want. I sleep well at night. I don't flinch when someone approaches me in a kitchen. I don't apologize for existing. My life isn't dramatic now. It's quiet, simple, peaceful. And after months of cruelty and fear, quiet peace feels like a miracle. I am enough just as I am. I don't need to sacrifice myself to prove my love. I don't need to accept cruelty to maintain family ties. I am whole, alone but not lonely, free at 72 to discover who I am when I'm not trying to earn love through self-destruction. That's my story. That's how a glass of water thrown in my face became the moment I decided to save my own life. That's how I went from begging for bread to living with abundance. That's how I learned that. Sometimes the people who owe you everything will treat you like you're worth nothing, and the only response is to walk away with your head held high. Have you ever had to choose between family and your own dignity? Have you ever loved someone who treated you like you were worthless? Have you ever had to walk away from someone you'd have died for? Tell me in the comments. You're not alone. There are more of us than you'd think. People who survived family betrayal and came out stronger on the other side. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here with me. Wherever you are in the world, whatever struggles you're facing, remember, you deserve respect. You deserve kindness. You deserve bread when you're hungry, and warmth when you're cold, and dignity every single day. Don't let anyone, not even your own child, convince you otherwise. The stories shared on this channel are entirely fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. We believe in honoring our elders and treating all family members with love and respect. These stories are meant to inspire reflection on family relationships and the importance of compassion. Any resemblance to real people, events, or families is purely coincidental and unintentional. These narratives carry no specific cultural, political, or religious implications.